The emergency broadcast began at exactly 11:47 p.m. Eastern Time on a Tuesday night in October. Most of the world was asleep, lost in dreams of ordinary problems like mortgage payments and morning commutes. They had no idea that their planet was about to change forever. Dr. Sarah Chen was not asleep. She never was at this hour, not since the nightmares started 3 months ago. She sat in her cramped apartment above the Chinese restaurant on 5th Street, surrounded by stacks of research papers and empty coffee cups. The small television in the corner flickered with late-night reruns, but she wasn't watching. Instead, she stared at the strange symbols she'd been drawing compulsively for weeks, symbols that seemed to burn themselves into her mind during those terrifying dreams. The broadcast cut through the mindless chatter of the late-night talk show host like a knife through silk. This is an emergency transmission from the International Space Monitoring Coalition. All citizens are advised to remain calm and stay indoors. We are receiving unprecedented signals from multiple locations across the globe. Military units are being deployed to secure affected areas. This is not a drill. Sarah's head snapped up. The coffee cup in her hand slipped, crashing to the floor and shattering across the hardwood. But she barely noticed. The symbols on her notebook seemed to pulse with an inner light, matching the rhythm of her suddenly racing heart. The television screen flickered, then went black. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, cutting through the static, came a sound that made Sarah's blood freeze in her veins. It was a deep, resonant tone, not quite a voice, not quite music, but something that seemed to vibrate through the very atoms of the air. It rose and fell in patterns that her rational mind couldn't understand, but that her soul recognized with terrifying clarity. It was a call to arms. And something ancient was answering. 3,000 miles away, in the desert outside Las Vegas, Captain Marcus Rodriguez was having the worst night of his career. The call had come in at 11:30 p.m., reports of seismic activity in an area that had been geologically stable for over a century. By the time his team arrived at the coordinates, the ground was splitting open like a ripe fruit. "Jesus Christ," whispered Sergeant Jackson, his binoculars trained on the growing fissure. "Cap, you seeing this?" Marcus didn't need binoculars. The crack in the earth was over 200 feet long and still growing, glowing with an eerie blue-green light that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. But that wasn't what made his mouth go dry. It was the sound coming from below. The same deep, resonant tone that Sarah Chen was hearing 3,000 miles away echoed from the depths of the earth. But here, it was accompanied by something else, the unmistakable sound of movement. Something massive was shifting in the darkness below. "Command, this is Alpha Team," Marcus spoke into his radio, trying to keep his voice steady. "We're going to need backup. Lots of it." "And sir?" He paused, watching as chunks of rock the size of cars began to rise from the fissure, defying gravity as they floated upward. "You might want to call the president." The response was immediate and panicked. "Rodriguez, what's your status?" "We're getting similar reports from 17 other locations worldwide. China, Russia, Brazil, Australia, it's everywhere." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but the words died in his throat. The floating rocks had begun to arrange themselves in patterns above the fissure. As he watched, they formed shapes that his mind struggled to process, angular, geometric designs that seemed to hurt to look at directly. And then, with a sound like thunder mixed with the death cry of a whale, something began to emerge from the crack in the earth. It was a hand. Not human, but recognizably a hand nonetheless. It was roughly the size of a city bus, made of what looked like polished obsidian, with fingers that tapered to razor-sharp points. As it gripped the edge of the fissure, the very air around it seemed to shimmer with heat distortion. "Fall back!" Marcus shouted, but his men were already running. "All units, fall back to minimum safe distance." The hand was followed by an arm, then a shoulder, then a head that defied description. It was vaguely humanoid, but stretched and elongated, with features that seemed to shift and change when you weren't looking directly at them. Where I should have been, there were 2 burning points of light that swept across the desert like searchlights. And when those lights fell on Marcus, he heard a voice in his mind that wasn't his own. "So, the little mammals have survived. How interesting." The thing that had been sleeping beneath the Nevada desert for 65 million years stretched its massive form and looked up at the stars. Its voice, when it spoke again, was like the grinding of tectonic plates. I am Cronax of the deep places. I hear the call of battle. Who dares to wake the titans of Earth? Within hours, every major government on Earth was in crisis mode. The creatures, for there were dozens of them emerging from fissures across the globe, were each unique, but all shared certain characteristics. They were massive, standing anywhere from 50 to 300 feet tall. They seemed to be made of various materials, stone, metal, crystal, or substances that human science couldn't identify. And they were clearly intelligent. President Harrison sat in the Situation Room, surrounded by his top advisors and a collection of the world's leading experts in fields ranging from geology to xenobiology. The main screen showed a map of the world, dotted with red markers indicating emergence sites. "Give me the situation report," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stepped forward. "Mr. President, we have confirmed emergence events at 23 locations worldwide. The entities appear to be some form of advanced life that has been dormant beneath the Earth's crust. They're not attacking, but they're not exactly peaceful either. They seem to be waiting." "Waiting for what?" "That's what we're trying to figure out, sir." "But sir, there's something else. We've been monitoring communications from the entities. They're talking to each other." The president rubbed his temples. "What are they saying?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, the country's leading expert in ancient languages, looked up from her tablet. "It's difficult to translate, sir. The language is incredibly complex, with harmonic elements that suggest meaning beyond simple words. But from what we can understand, they're discussing something called the Ancient Compact and waiting for the summoner to reveal themselves." "The summoner?" "We believe it refers to whoever sent the signal that woke them up. The problem is, we can't identify the source. The signal seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once." 3,000 miles away, Dr. Sarah Chen was staring at her notebook with growing horror. The symbols she'd been drawing for months were now glowing with the same blue-green light as the fissures. And as she watched, new symbols were appearing on the page, drawn by her own hand without her conscious control. She tried to put the pen down, but her fingers wouldn't obey. The symbols continued to flow across the page, forming patterns that seemed to make sense on a level deeper than language. And with each new symbol, the voice in her head grew stronger. "You have done well, daughter of the New Age. The compact is nearly complete. Soon, the old wars will begin anew, and the earth will shake with the footsteps of giants." "No," Sarah whispered, fighting against the compulsion. "I don't want this. I don't understand what's happening." "Understanding is not required. Only obedience. You are the summoner, chosen by forces beyond your comprehension. The Titans have slept for millions of years, waiting for the call to battle. And you, dear child, have provided that call." The pen in her hand moved faster now, completing a complex diagram that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. As the final line was drawn, Sarah felt something break inside her mind, a barrier that had been holding back an ocean of ancient memories and knowledge. She saw the Earth as it had been 65 million years ago, when massive beings of incredible power had waged war across the planet's surface. The battles had been so devastating that they had triggered the extinction event that ended the dinosaurs. In the end, the survivors had agreed to a truce, the Ancient Compact, and had gone into voluntary hibernation, waiting for the day when the Earth would need their power again. That day had come. The Titan that emerged from the fissure in the Sahara Desert was unlike any of the others. Where most seemed to be made of earthly materials, this one appeared to be constructed from crystallized starlight. Its body was translucent, filled with swirling galaxies of light that pulsed with each movement. It called itself Astralion, the Starforged. The one that rose from the depths of the Pacific Ocean was its polar opposite. Thalassic the Deep Dweller was a creature of living water and pressure, its form constantly shifting between solid and liquid states. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of tsunamis crashing against distant shores. They had been enemies for eons. Astralion, Thalassic's voice boomed across the ocean, causing tidal waves that crashed into every coastline within 1,000 miles. I smell your starfire burning. Do you still claim dominion over the upper realms? The crystal giant's response was a beam of concentrated starlight that split the ocean in half, creating a canyon of steam and superheated water. The cosmos bow to my will, water slave. As do you. Then let us test that claim. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded human history. Astrolion drew power from the stars themselves, pulling down sheets of cosmic energy that lit up the night sky like aurora borealis. Thalassic countered by raising the very ocean floor, creating new islands and mountain ranges with casual gestures. Their battle was so intense that it could be seen from space. Satellites captured images of the two titans clashing in the middle of the Pacific, their conflict creating new weather patterns that sent hurricanes racing toward populated coastlines. But they were not the only ones fighting. In the Amazon rainforest, a creature of living vegetation called Verdanis battled with Pyroclast, a being of magma and flame that had erupted from the Andes Mountains. Their conflict set half of South America on fire, while the other half was consumed by aggressive plant growth that could swallow entire cities. In the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, Glacialis the Icebound fought against Voltaic the Stormbearer, their battle creating electromagnetic pulses that knocked out power grids across the southern hemisphere. And in the heart of Africa, Cronax the Deep Dweller faced off against Solaris the Sun-Touched, their conflict creating a new desert where the Sahara had once been. The world watched in horror as these ancient beings waged war across the planet's surface, their battles threatening to tear the very fabric of reality apart. Sarah Chin found herself standing in Times Square, though she had no memory of leaving her apartment. The city was in chaos around her, people fleeing in panic as news reports showed the global devastation being caused by the Titans' battles. But she felt strangely calm, as if she were watching everything from a great distance. The voice in her head had grown stronger, more insistent. It no longer felt like an external presence but like a part of her own thoughts. You see now what you have unleashed. The ancient compact is broken. The Titans wake to find their old enemies still alive, still powerful. They must settle their differences as they always have, through battle. But they're destroying everything, Sarah said aloud, ignoring the stares of the few people still on the street. The whole world is going to be torn apart. Perhaps. Or perhaps the strong will survive and the weak will perish, as nature intended. This is the way of the Titans. This is the way of war. There has to be another way. There is. But it requires sacrifice. It requires one who can speak for the new children of Earth. One who can broker a new compact. Sarah felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders like a lead blanket. You want me to talk to them? To try to make peace? I want you to prove that your species deserves to survive. The Titans respect strength, not pleas for mercy. You must show them that humanity has something to offer beyond simple existence. Around her, the city continued to shake as distant battles raged. On the massive screens that decorated the buildings, news anchors reported casualties in the millions and rising. Entire cities had been evacuated. The global economy was in freefall. The world was ending, and it was all her fault. But maybe, just maybe, she could fix it. The emergency session of the United Nations was held in a bunker deep beneath New York City. Representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered to discuss the crisis, though many participated via satellite link from their own underground bunkers. President Harrison addressed the assembly with grim determination. Ladies and gentlemen, we face an extinction-level event. The entities we're calling Titans have been engaged in global warfare for the past 72 hours. Conservative estimates suggest that if their battles continue at this pace, our planet will be uninhabitable within the week. The Russian representative, Premier Volkov, leaned forward. What do we know about stopping them? Surely our combined military forces can do something. General Hayes shook her head. We've tried everything short of nuclear weapons. Conventional explosives don't even scratch them. They seem to exist partially outside our normal understanding of physics. Some of our scientists think they might be manipulating fundamental forces we don't even have names for. Then we use nuclear weapons, said the Chinese representative, General Li, whatever it takes. That's not an option, President Harrison said firmly. The fallout would be worse than the Titans themselves. We need a different solution. Dr. Vasquez stood up. Actually, sir, we might have one. We've been monitoring the Titans' communications, and there's a pattern. They keep mentioning the summoner and asking when this individual will present themselves for judgment. We think they're waiting for someone to take responsibility for waking them up. And if we find this person? Unknown, sir. But it's possible they might be willing to negotiate. The Titans seem to operate under some kind of code of honor. If we can find their rules, we might be able to work within them. As if summoned by their words, the bunker's communication system crackled to life. But instead of a human voice, the deep, resonant tone of the Titans filled the room. Children of the New Age. We grow weary of your silence. The summoner must present themselves within one solar rotation, or we will assume that your species has chosen the path of the coward. In that case, we will settle our ancient disputes without regard for your continued existence. The message ended, leaving the assembled world leaders in stunned silence. One solar rotation, President Harrison said quietly. 24 hours. To find someone we're not even sure exists, added Premier Volkov. Oh, they exist, Dr. Vasquez said, studying her tablet. The signal patterns suggest someone with an incredible level of psychic resonance. The kind of person who might experience prophetic dreams or spontaneous knowledge of ancient symbols. We need to find them, and fast. 3 levels above them, Saracen sat in the abandoned subway tunnel she'd been hiding in for the past day. The voice in her head had grown so loud that she could barely think her own thoughts. But she knew what she had to do. It was time to face the Titans. Sarah made her way through the city's ruins, following an inexplicable internal compass that led her toward the East River. Behind her, the skyline of Manhattan was lit by the glow of distant battles. Ahead, she could see the massive form of Kronax the Deep Dweller, who had emerged from a fissure in Brooklyn and was now standing knee-deep in the harbor. The Titan was even more imposing up close. Its obsidian skin seemed to absorb light, creating a void in the shape of a giant. When it turned its burning eyes toward her, Sarah felt her courage falter for the first time. But the voice in her head pushed her forward. Do not show fear. They can sense weakness like predators sense blood. You are the summoner. You have power here, whether you know it or not. I don't feel powerful, Sarah whispered. Then feel angry. Feel responsible. Feel the weight of every life that hangs in the balance. Channel that into strength. Sarah squared her shoulders and walked onto the pier. Her voice, when she spoke, was surprisingly steady. I am Sarah Chen. I am the one you call the summoner. Kronax's head tilted, and when he spoke, his voice was like an avalanche. So, the little mammal finally shows courage. Tell me, summoner, why did you wake us from our slumber? I didn't mean to. I was having dreams, drawing symbols. I didn't know what they meant. Dreams. The giant's laugh was like breaking mountains. You think this was accident? You think ancient forces stir without purpose? You were chosen, child. The question is why. Around the harbor, other Titans began to gather. Sarah could see them rising from the water, emerging from new fissures in the city's foundations, materializing from thin air. Each one was unique, terrifying, and focused entirely on her. I don't know why I was chosen, Sarah said, her voice growing stronger. But I know why I'm here now. You're destroying everything. Millions of people are dead or dying. The world is ending because of wars that started before humans even existed. And this from Astralion, the crystal giant, who had materialized beside Kronax in a shower of starlight. Your species has existed for mere moments. You are insects. Why should we care about your survival? Because we're not insects, Sarah shot back, anger finally flaring in her chest. We're builders. We're dreamers. We create art and music and poetry. We explore the stars and plumb the depths of the oceans. We love and fight and sacrifice for each other. We're not just another species, we're the inheritors of this world. Big words, rumbled Thalassic, rising from the harbor in a waterspout of epic proportions. But words are wind. What can you offer us that we cannot take? Sarah felt the moment of truth arriving. The voice in her head had grown quiet, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She looked around at the assembled titans, beings of incredible power who had fought for eons over territory and dominance. What could she possibly offer them? And then she understood. Purpose, she said simply. You've been fighting the same battles for millions of years. You've been sleeping for 65 million years because you were bored. You've accomplished everything you set out to do, and now you're just going through the motions. The titans exchanged glances that could have leveled buildings. You want to know what we can offer you? We can offer you something new. Something you've never seen before. We can show you growth, change, evolution. We can show you what it means to start from nothing and build something beautiful. And in exchange? Cronax leaned down, his massive face level with hers. In exchange, you help us survive. You become the guardians of this world instead of its destroyers. You take your ancient power and use it to protect something that's still growing, still becoming. The silence stretched for long moments. Then Solaris the Sun-Touched spoke, his voice like solar wind. You propose a new compact. One that makes us servants to a lesser species. I propose a partnership, Sarah corrected. You have power. We have potential. Together, we might accomplish things that neither of us could achieve alone. Words, Pyroclast spat, his voice like a volcanic eruption. Always words with the young races. You speak of partnership, but what proof do you offer? What strength do you bring to balance our power? Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Every titan was watching her, waiting for her answer. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and she had no idea what to say. But then she remembered something. A story her grandmother had told her years ago, about a small bird that had helped a great eagle by removing a thorn from its wing. The bird gained nothing from the act except the knowledge that it had done something good. You want proof of our strength? Sarah said, her voice carrying across the harbor. Let me show you something. She closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, using the same strange ability that had let her draw the symbols and hear the voice. But this time, she didn't try to control it. Instead, she let it flow through her, connecting her to every human consciousness on the planet. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Through her, the Titans suddenly experienced what it meant to be human. They felt the fear of a child hiding in a basement as the earth shook above. They felt the courage of a firefighter running into a burning building to save strangers. They felt the love of a mother holding her baby as the world ended around them. They felt 7 billion human hearts beating in unison, each one unique but all connected by the simple desire to survive, to protect those they loved, to build something better than what came before. And for the first time in their eternal existence, the Titans felt wonder. This, Sarah said, opening her eyes, is what we bring to the partnership. Not physical strength, but something else. Something you've never experienced because you've always been alone. Connection, whispered Verdanis, the plant giant. They are connected to each other. Not just physically, but spiritually. It's like a song, added Voltaic the Stormbearer. 7 billion voices singing in harmony. Cronax straightened to his full height, his burning eyes thoughtful. You offer us membership in your choir? I offer you the chance to be part of something larger than yourselves. To be guardians instead of destroyers. To help build instead of tear down. The Titans were silent for a long moment. Then Astralion spoke, his crystal form pulsing with inner light. There is wisdom in this proposal. But wisdom alone is not enough. If we are to accept this new compact, you must prove that your species is worthy of our protection. You must face the trial of worthiness. Sarah's heart sank. What kind of trial? Single combat, Thalassic said simply. Choose your champion. They will face one of us in battle. If they win, we accept the compact. If they lose,
Humanity ends, Sarah finished. Humanity ends, Kronax confirmed.
Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She reached out with her mind again, touching the consciousness of every human on Earth. Somewhere out there had to be someone who could stand against a Titan and win. Someone with the strength, the skill, the courage to face down a being of godlike power. But as she searched, she realized the truth.
There was no one. No human could match a Titan in single combat.
They were simply too powerful, too ancient, too far beyond human understanding.
Unless.
I'll do it, she said quietly. The Titans erupted in laughter that shook the harbor and sent waves crashing against the shore.
You? Pyroclast roared. You are tiny, weak, young. You would last seconds against the weakest of us.
Maybe, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her terror.
But I'm the summoner. I'm the one who woke you up. If anyone has the right to face this trial, it's me. The laughter stopped. The Titans exchanged glances that carried meanings humans couldn't understand. Very well, Kronax said finally. But know this, summoner.
If you face the trial of worthiness, you face it alone. No weapons, no allies, no tricks.
Just your strength against ours. I understand. And if you lose, you die. Not just your body, but your spirit.
Your consciousness will be scattered to the cosmic winds, never to be reborn.
Sarah's mouth went dry, but she nodded. I understand. Then choose your opponent. Sarah looked around at the assembled Titans.
Each one was a force of nature made manifest, a being of such power that they could reshape continents with a thought.
How could she possibly choose?
But then she remembered the voice in her head, the one that had guided her this far. It was still there, quieter now but still present.
Choose the one who represents the greatest threat to your world. Choose the one whose defeat will mean the most.
Sarah's eyes settled on Kronax, the first Titan she had encountered, the one whose emergence had started this whole crisis.
I choose Kronax the Deep Dweller. The obsidian giant's eyes flared with surprise and something that might have been respect. Bold choice, summoner. I am the eldest of us, the strongest. I have battled gods and won. Then if I can defeat you, the others will accept the compact?
If you can defeat me, little mammal, I will personally ensure that every Titan on this world bows to your new order.
But you will not defeat me. You cannot.
Sarah stepped forward, her small human form dwarfed by the giant's massive presence.
We'll see.
The other Titans withdrew to the edges of the harbor, creating a circle around Sarah and Kronax.
The water between them began to glow with an eerie light as ancient powers stirred.
The trial of worthiness follows the old rules, Astralion announced, his crystal form acting as referee.
No outside interference.
No weapons save those you can create with your own power. Victory goes to the one who forces their opponent to yield or destroys them utterly. Sarah looked up at Kronax, who towered above her like a living mountain. His obsidian skin seemed to absorb all the light around him, creating a void in the shape of a giant. When he moved, the ground shook.
Last chance to reconsider, summoner, he rumbled.
I do not wish to destroy you, but I will not hold back. Neither will I, Sarah replied, though she had no idea what that meant. She had no special powers, no superhuman abilities. She was just a woman with strange dreams and an inexplicable connection to ancient forces. But as Kronax raised his massive hand to strike, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The voice in her head, which had been guiding her all this time, suddenly spoke with crystal clarity.
You are not just the summoner. You are the bridge. You are the connection between the old world and the new. Use that connection. Use it now.
Sarah closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, not to the Titans this time, but to the Earth itself. She felt the planet's vast consciousness, the slow thoughts of stone and metal and living things. She felt the dreams of mountains and the songs of oceans. She felt the patient waiting of forests and the fierce joy of storms. And she felt the Earth's pain. The Titan's awakening had wounded the planet. Their battles had torn great gashes in the world's surface, disrupted weather patterns, killed millions of creatures. The Earth was crying out in anguish, and no one had been listening. Except Sarah. She opened her eyes and looked up at Kronax, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of the planet itself.
Stop. The obsidian giant's hand froze in mid-strike.
His burning eyes widened in shock. You speak with the voice of the world soul. I speak with the voice of your mother, Sarah replied, her words carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. The earth that birthed you, that nurtured you, that gave you life and power. And she is in pain. Around the harbor, the other Titans began to stir uneasily. They could feel it too now, the planet's distress, its plea for peace. You have forgotten, Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. You have forgotten why you were given your power. Not to make war, but to be guardians. Not to destroy, but to protect. You are the Earth's immune system, her defenders against threats from beyond. But you have turned your power against each other, and in doing so, you have become the very thing you were meant to fight. Kronax lowered his hand, his obsidian features troubled. The old wars, they began for good reasons. Territory, resources, the survival of our domains. And they ended 65 million years ago when you realized that your battles were destroying the very thing you were fighting to protect. You made the ancient compact because you understood that the Earth's survival was more important than your petty squabbles. But we were awakened by the call to battle. You were awakened by a call for help, Sarah corrected. The Earth is facing a new threat. Not from within, but from beyond. And she needs her guardians to be ready. As if summoned by her words, the sky above the harbor began to change. The stars seemed to shift and dance, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. And from the depths of space came a sound that made the Titans' own voices seem like whispers. It was the sound of something vast and hungry, moving through the void between stars. The Devourers, Astralion whispered, his crystal form pulsing with alarm. They have found us. Impossible, Thalassic roared. The barriers still hold. The ancient defenses are failing, Sarah said quietly. The Earth has been alone too long. Her guardians have been sleeping, and her defenses have weakened. The Devourers can sense it. They're coming. In the sky above, the stars began to go out one by one, swallowed by something that moved like a living shadow across the cosmos. How long? Kronax asked, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. Sarah reached out with her mind, touching the edges of the approaching darkness. What she felt there made her soul recoil in horror. 6 months, she said. Maybe less. The Titans exchanged glances that carried eons of shared history. Ancient enemies, but also ancient allies when the need arose. Then the trial of worthiness is ended, Kronax declared. Not by victory or defeat, but by necessity. The old wars are suspended. The new compact is accepted. He knelt before Sarah, his massive form bowing until his obsidian head was level with hers. Command us, Summoner. Tell us how to prepare for the war to come. The next 6 months passed in a blur of frantic activity. The world that had been on the brink of destruction became a hive of unprecedented cooperation. The Titans, no longer enemies but allies, worked alongside human scientists and engineers to prepare for the coming invasion. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, no longer just the summoner but the bridge between two vastly different forms of consciousness. She spent her days translating between Titan and human, helping each species understand the other's strengths and capabilities. The first major breakthrough came when Dr. Elena Vasquez, working with Astralion the Starforged, discovered that the Titan's power could be channeled through human technology. By combining Titan energy with human innovation, they created weapons and defenses that neither species could have developed alone. Kronax worked with geological teams to reinforce the planet's crust, creating a network of underground fortresses that could withstand bombardment from space. Thalassic coordinated with oceanographers to turn the seas themselves into a weapon, preparing tidal forces that could repel landing craft. Verdani's worked with agricultural specialists to create rapid growth forests that could provide cover and resources for human populations. Pyroclast collaborated with metallurgists to forge new alloys that could withstand temperatures that would vaporize ordinary matter. But perhaps the most important development was the creation of the Titan-human interface, a system that allowed humans to temporarily channel Titan power through specially designed suits. It was dangerous, potentially fatal, but it gave humanity the ability to fight alongside their new allies on equal terms. The first test pilot was Captain Marcus Rodriguez, the same man who had witnessed Kronax's awakening. The armor suit looked like something from a science fiction movie, covered in circuits that pulsed with the same blue-green light as the Titans themselves.
"How do you feel?" Sarah asked as Marcus stood up in the suit for the first time.
"Like I could punch a hole through a mountain," he replied, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before.
"And like I might explode if I sneeze too hard."
"That's about right," Kronax rumbled, his massive form looming over the testing facility.
"The power is intoxicating, but it demands respect. Use it wisely, little warrior." As the months passed, Sarah found herself changing as well.
Her connection to the Titans and the Earth itself had awakened abilities she'd never imagined. She could sense the planet's moods, feel the movement of tectonic plates, even perceive the approach of the Devourers like a cold wind blowing from the depths of space.
And that wind was getting stronger.
The Devourers arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, 6 months to the day after the Titans' awakening. They came not as ships or mechanical constructs, but as a living darkness that swallowed light and matter with equal hunger. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt UN headquarters, watching the sky through specially designed filters that allowed her to see the approaching entities without being driven mad by their appearance. Beside her, representatives from every nation on Earth monitored the global defense network.
"First contact in 30 minutes, General Hayes reported. All Titan-human interface units are in position. The Titans themselves are taking their assigned positions. And the planetary defenses? Online and ready. If this doesn't work..."
"It will work," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt.
"It has to." The Devourers struck the outer atmosphere like a plague of cosmic locusts.
Where they touched, reality itself seemed to fray at the edges. The aurora borealis exploded across the sky as the planet's magnetic field struggled to repel the invasion.
"Titan units, engage," Sarah commanded through the global communication system.